Hello, my name's Gavin and this is Genre Books, and it's time for a book haul. I know I said I wasn't going to do one of these for a while after the last haul a couple of months ago, but I am weak. Technically this is a book and digest haul, but I'll go through the science fiction magazines I got later on in the video. To begin with is a very tatty old Mushroom Press book from 1953, I believe. 1953, Scion Limited. Mushroom Press, it just means one of the many publishers that sprang up out of nowhere in post-World War Britain. I'm going to be speaking more about these when it comes to GarbAugust, and I think that possibly the next two books might form part of GarbAugust. The first is The Purple Wizard by Volstead Gridban. You'll be unsurprised to learn that Volstead Gridban isn't a real name. It's a pseudonym or a house name. I think it is a house name. So owned by Scion. As you can see, it's in fantastic condition. This book is actually written by John Russell Fearn, so the pulp and mystery writer who had been working. By this point, he's already had sort of 2 decades worth of work under his belt. But with these books, they are written to order. They're given a payment. I don't know how much he would have been paid for this, somewhere in the region of 100 to 200 pounds perhaps. The book comes out, there's never a reprinting. This never saw the light of day again, and it is very cheaply produced. The cover, as you can see, falling apart, is paper. If this was a digest, you wouldn't be surprised, but it's a digest presented as a novel. It's got adverts in it, so you'll have seen this one before if you've watched one of my videos. Joe Nawad, the Cornish piskie, which has been guaranteed dipped in the water from the Lucky Saint's well and will bring you good luck. There is also on the back page a continuation of the testimonials of people who have experienced the luck of Joe Nawad. People since 1930 have been saying how lucky they've been. Now consider that this is 1953, and since that beginning in 1930, I think you've probably had the General Strike, the Great Depression, and the Second World War. So I suppose luck is relative. These maybe should have been mass produced. But I'm not really here for the adverts. I'm here for the story, so it's going to be science fiction. You can see that, well, there's a little bit of sword play in there as well, with the sword prominent on the front cover, but the structure behind them is very definitely science fiction. Another mushroom publisher is the Ward Lock and Company, and here is Conditioned for Space by Alan Ash. I don't know about Alan Ash. I don't know if Alan Ash possibly another house name. I'll find out. But holding up slightly better than the Purple Wizard, but still pretty much falling apart. I do not often see these in. I don't think I've ever seen many in great condition. I'm probably looking in the wrong places, but I will read these very gingerly and store them very carefully in the hopes that they don't deteriorate further. The next book is a Steinbeck I've not read, and it's probably the last of the big name titles that I've not read, and that is East of Eden. I think there is a plan by Classics and Company to read East of Eden at the end of the year, which was in the back of my mind when I saw this on the shelf of a charity shop. I showed one of these books recently in the GarbAugust pile of possibilities, and that is Six Gun Samurai by Patrick Lee. I'm only showing you this book because the one I won't be reading in August is this one, which I got at the same time. It's the same writer, it's the same series. I believe this is fourth in the series. I don't think I'm really going to have to have read these sequentially, but this is Kamikaze Justice, so another Western Eastern crossover. This next one is again definitely a reading copy, and that is The Passage by Justin Cronin. And I think there was a period where covers were being printed with this sort of plastic covering, which in almost all cases is peeling back, but this was pennies at a charity shop, and it's a book I've heard good things about. It's a bit of a tome, but maybe I'll wait until the next horror themed event. Next, two books from one of my favourites, Arthur C. Clarke. The first is non-fiction or speculative non-fiction, and this is the second edition of this book, which is an exercise in futurology on the part of Arthur C. Clarke. The original was 1962 or 63, where he is envisaging the kinds of technology that we could be enjoying in the heady future of 2024. And this second edition is from 1973. So it will be interesting to see how accurate he was in his 51-year-old predictions. Also from the mid-70s is this, Imperial Earth, from definitely the fiction wing of Clarke's output, and the sort of space opera type wing of his output. I've not read too much of, I'd say his space opera type of books, but I'm hoping that they do sort of marry the imagination with sort of a grounding in technical realism or plausibility that Clarke often brings to his works. It's fair to say I do not expect the same kind of hard science fiction rigour from the next one. This looks like absolute knockabout fun. It looks like it's possibly more than a little tongue-in-cheek or parodic. It is Harry Harrison, the Star Smashers of the Galaxy Rangers, and it has, for something, or I suppose, mid-70s this copy is from, has one of the most disco covers I think I've got on any of my collection. A novel that I will probably retain until next year, in the hope and expectation that Spring into Adventure is a recurrent event, and that is The Rose of Tibet by Lionel Davidson. This is the story of a British artist who travels to Tibet in search of his brother, who has been reported dead, and finds himself in Tibet at the time of the Chinese invasion. This has glowing notes from both Daphne du Maurier and Graham Greene, who sort of praise it, and du Maurier sort of sees Davidson as the reincarnation of H. Rider Haggard. So this is something which I'm hoping the book lives up to. Another one I picked up yesterday, which I'm hoping will fill one of the GarbIngo squares, is The Mugger by Ed McBain. So a police procedural with green on the cover, 1930s social satire, and I love this author, but I've only read his long series, A Dance to the Music of Time. This is a standalone work. It's his third book, originally from 1933. This is a Penguin 1961 imprint, and From a View to a Death from Anthony Pohl. Really enjoy his writing. I have high expectations here. A while back I got a book called 40 Signs of Rain by Kim Stanley Robinson. So very much Sci-Fi, so climate change based science fiction. I did not appreciate when I bought that book that it was the first in a series, and I didn't appreciate it until I saw on a shelf in a charity shop yesterday what must be 2 sequels, 50 Degrees Below and 60 Days and Counting, a novel of occult horror in the chilling H.P. Lovecraft tradition, and also winner of wackiest cover of the day is Colin Wilson's The Philosopher's Stone. I mean, this book looks like it's got everything you need. It's got a UFO, dinosaurs, a pile of rocks with a mysterious eye, and a big purple head with green jewels spitting fire. So I'm hoping this is all indicative of the contents inside. The next book is from the Women's Press Science Fiction Division, and that is Lorna Mitchell's The Revolution of St. Joan. This is from the late 80s. It's, I think, her only, if not her first, science fiction work. And because I can't always just be buying genre fiction, and also because I can never pass up an Angela Carter that I don't have, is Angela Carter, The Sadian Women. So a group of essays on sexual politics. Whether I have to read the Sade first, I'm not sure. So much for the novels. On to the magazines and digests. This first one is quite an old one, and that's a little bit the worse for wear, but this is Volume 1, Number 1 from 1953 of Fantastic. This has stories by Walter M. Miller Jr., Richard Matheson, Jerome Bixby, Robert Sheckley, Mac Reynolds. Annoyingly, the cover for this is nearly off. I'll have to see if I can do a little bit of a repair job. The next is Worlds of If. So this is leaping forward a couple of decades. This is 1972. Lester Del Rey is the features editor. Theodore Sturgeon is the contributing editor. There are works here by Stephen Toole, Piers Anthony, Alan Dean Foster, Gordon Eklund, amongst others. The managing editor of Worlds of If is Judy Lynn Benjamin, who was later to become Judy Lynn Del Rey, and who the Del Rey imprint of books is named after. Even further forward now to 1979, and the most recognisable sideburns this side of the American Civil War is Isaac Asimov science fiction anthology. So there's nearly 300 pages, this one, and has works by Asimov, as you'd expect, Arthur C. Clarke, Larry Niven, Jack Williamson, Brian Aldiss, Randall Garrett, Barry Malzberg, and Jack Chalker, amongst others. So for the few pennies it cost me, I don't care that much about the condition or the fact that I don't have anything else in the range. There's like a great selection of stories to have. It's not the only Asimov we're going to see for the rest of this video. This is Isaac Asimov's Space of Her Own. So it's not edited by Isaac Asimov. They are just using his name to sell the literature. So Space of Her Own, presumably a play on Virginia Woolf's Room of One's Own. This is an anthology edited by Shauna McCarthy and is all women writers. So here we have Connie Willis, Pat Cadigan, Tanith Lee, Ursula K. Le Guin, Pamela Sargent, Joan D. Vinge, Sharon Webb, P.J. Macquarie, P.A. Kagan, Sydney J. Van Skyok. Nearly got to the end of the list there. Amongst others. 20 stories here. Again, close to sort of 300 pages worth. That was 1983. By 1986, things have slimmed down a little bit. This is perhaps not a full-on anthology. This is just Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine. Tanith Lee again, and an Isaac Asimov saving certificate. To save you actually having to cut something out of the magazine to send back to get money off a subscription. So this has a story by Michael Bishop, a story by Ian Watson, a story by Tanith Lee, which I think is the cover story, and the conclusion, annoyingly, of Count Zero by William Gibson. So the editor of this is actually Gardner Dozois. The managing editor is Sheila Williams, and Isaac Asimov is actually the editorial director, which I think is just, a nice way to try and get Isaac Asimov's name on the cover. What I found was, in a charity shop, these digests being sold for 99p each. So I grabbed armfuls of them. I won't go through them all. I will try to whiz through these as quickly as I can, but still showing you the covers. And it is the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. And I'll do these in chronological order. The earliest I have is April 1972, and this is a special James Blish issue. So it includes Midsummer Century, a complete new novel by James Blish. It's got article by Lester Del Rey. Got a profile on Blish by Robert A.W. Lowndes, and a handful of short stories, including one by Gene Wolfe. 1 month later, May 1972. As you can see, the magazine of fantasy and science fiction is an altogether more grown-up affair than the pulps that I usually show on these videos. It takes itself not too seriously, but much more seriously. And here's that man Asimov again. He's now the science editor, although Edward L. Furman is the editor, and I think he was editor for a quarter of a century. But there are articles in this magazine as well as stories. So we've got a couple of novelettes. We've got a handful of short stories, including one by Ron Goulart. We have a review of recent films. There's for a bit of fun. There's also a cartoon. Is it any fun? Is it a funny cartoon? I do not understand the cartoon. But there's also a special report on science fiction and the university, including an article on jazz by William Tenn, and Science Academe and I by Isaac Asimov. June 1972, and a nice sort of stained glass effect there. So a short novel by Phyllis Gottlieb, short stories by Kurt Siodmak. I love Kurt Siodmak. That's Donovan's brain. I love Donovan's brain. Gene Wolfe again, and Fred Pohl, and books reviewed by James Blish. Skipping a few months, September 1972, Larry Niven, James E. Gunn, Barry Malzberg, John Sladek, Avram Davidson, Isaac Asimov, of course. To be honest, I think if Isaac Asimov just had his weekly shopping list, they'll print it as an article. November 1972, Frederick Pohl and C.M. Kornbluth is one of my favourite pairings in science fiction. Michael J. Coney, Anthony Boucher, and Phyllis Eisenstein. December 1972, Keith Laumer, John Christopher, Ron Goulart again, and an article by Elsprague de Camp, and books reviewed by Joanna Russ. January 1973, Thomas Burnett Swan, George R.R. Martin, John Sladek, Barry Malzberg. February 1973, Paul Anderson, Robert Aikman, Carol Carr, Lisa Tuttle. I am at this point just going to be mentioning the authors whose names I haven't already mentioned. We've changed in April of 1973. The cover is stiffer cardboard. Gregory Benford, C.S. Claremont, George Alec Effinger, Warner Law, David Drake, William Lee, Robert F. Young. May 1973. The Asutra, Part 1 of 2 by Jack Vance. Russell Bates, Lawrence M. Janifer. June 1973. The second part of The Asutra by Jack Vance, which I think I've got somewhere. Also, Brian Lumley, Robin Scott Wilson, Tory Warner, and Ray Bradbury. Skipping forward to December 1973. James Tiptree Jr., Jack Williamson, Herbert Gould, Gary Jennings, Robin Scott Wilson and Doris Pitkin Buck. May 1974, and we've reverted to the paper covers again, including a story, actual fiction, by Isaac Asimov. Lester Del Rey, Robert Borski, Phyllis McLennan, and books reviewed by Harlan Ellison. August 1974. We're back to the card covers again. I can't keep up. Gordon Eklund, John Varley, Andrew Ward, R. Bretner. November 74. Brian Aldiss, Joe Haldeman, Harry Harrison. February 1975. Dinosaurs on the Moon. Yep, Dinosaurs on the Moon. Fiction this time from Joanna Russ. Also Richard Lupoff, David Drake and Avram Davidson. July 76. Mel Gilden, Charles R. Runyon. Books reviewed by Alexei and Corey Panshin. February 78. Stephen R. Donaldson, Stephen King, Edward Wellen, Algis Budrys reviewing the books. August 78. Fred Saberhagen, Rod Keane and Herbie Brennan. December 1978. Glenn Cook, Thomas M. Dish, L. Sprague de Camp, writing fiction rather than an article. Bruce McAllister, Patrice Milton, Gary Jennings. January 79. Christopher Priest, Orson Scott Card, John Clute reviewing the books. John Clute from the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction. February 79. Jane Yolen, Andrew Weiner, James Patrick Kelly, James Hoetker, Suzette Hayden Elgin. March 79. Gary Jennings, Lee Killiff, Thomas Wilde, Ramsey Campbell. May 79. Russell Kirk, Jack Dan, Philip Jose Farmer, Robert Bloch. June 79. Hilbert Schenk, Nick O'Donoghue, John Morrissey, Paul Dellinger. And finally, for the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, we're skipping ahead several years to February 1985. Damon Knight, Connie Willis, Ian Watson, Jim Aiken, Stephen Gallagher. Books reviewed by Algis Budrys and film and TV reviewed by Harlan Ellison. And finally, something else I might do for GarbAugust, because it's going to knock 2 squares off the GarbBingo card. So it's Fantastic Stories. This is December 77. It's green on the cover. Has stories by L. Sprague de Camp, C.L. Grant, David Bischoff, Lynn Carter, Avram Davidson. And it has cigarette adverts. Alive with pleasure with a Newport cigarette. Archery and emphysema. And that's it. Congratulations if you made it this far. I'll be back soon. Till then, bye.